This record, Matter of Time, is kind of like a chance for me to deal with topics that are concerning time and how we treat it, how we can take it for granted and look over things and we cherish them later when it's too late, maybe sometimes. And so it's always a matter of time and how you relate to it that gives you, I think, a certain peace or satisfaction in life. Bill Drescher, I have to just say, I don't mean to sound like a public service announcement, but I think every musician who ends up having the experience of working with a producer understands the benefit of that objective ear. And the better the objective ear and the more skill that guy has, the better. And Bill and I created a friendship in the recordings of Alien Cowboys, and we continued it on the first album, Thanking Jupiter, and now with this one, and we really have a good communication when it comes, a good rapport when it comes to recording. It's one of the blessings of being able to do music, is to be able to work with people of that kind of talent and their giving nature that helps you draw it out of yourself, whatever you can. My daughters played a big part in the development of my music, and they put me definitely in touch with things that I wasn't normally considering. and coincidentally, my producer Bill Drescher also has two daughters, so it in part sort of has a part explanation of how we have a similar outlook on a lot of things. We both also grew up on the British Invasion sound, and all those bands were the greatest, from the Beatles and Stones all the way through the Who and whatnot, Yardbirds, etc. There was just the Kinks, so many great bands, and we were nurtured by those bands and excited by those bands. So that, along with having the two daughters in our lives, and they're both kind of the same age group, so it was a very similar thing. We became really strong friends, I think in large part due to that. A Piece of Your Heart, the spelling on it was sort of a way to convey that the song kind of offers two different looks at the internet. One is the one that a person feeds and gives information away to, and the other is the way the technology can take over your time, and if you get too lost in it, and this is more of a generational thing, obviously, and I guess from my point of view, I notice it because I watch my daughters and I watch other younger people with that connection. And the Piece of Your Heart, it's trying to convey that don't let the technology steal your heart, but use the technology for gain and as an instrument to help you through life. 1,000 Ways is probably directly influenced by an artist from that British Invasion generation named Steve Winwood. He was a guy that had a lot of soul that I always enjoyed. I grew up on the groups like the Four Tops and Smokey Robinson and things like that. And so, and as a small kid, I didn't really realize that they were artists of color. When I was young, I didn't think about that. But as I got older and heard that and saw the difference of how the cultures kind of treat music and allow it to be the vehicle for their expression, I began to realize that Stevie Winwood was one of those guys that had that quality in his voice that spoke to that kind of experience in life. Even though he was a young guy and a gifted man, he was able to speak to things beyond his years. And so with this song, A Thousand Ways, we've all been through relationships, and probably enough relationships, good and bad, successful or not, that have given us some experience that, if I could have done this differently, I might have, and things might have turned out differently, or we both could have done better, which is kind of usually what it boils down to, is that when it doesn't work out, sometimes you got to just say that both people weren't quite hitting the right chord together. And the beauty of life is that there's 1,000 ways, and in the end, 1,000,000 chances go on in a lifetime. 1,000,000 chances to be a better person. 1,000,000 opportunities to treat someone fairly, or nice, just with respect, a small bit of respect. And even a small amount of respect goes a long way today. Old Man was a song that resonated with me, and I suppose it really basically is because of the simplicity of the acoustic guitar sound and writing just a simple little story. And Neil was one of those guys that was an acoustic guitar player back in the days of Buffalo Springfield with Steve Stills, writing great songs and making some fantastic records. And I wanted to throw a little different spin on Neil's version, though I tried to stay reasonably close to the arrangement and the approach. We had to make some decisions because at the time he was employing banjo and recording in a barn in a very organic situation with his band, and I kind of wanted to bring out more of me just playing the guitar and conveying the song that way. So it was a great experience, and he was one of those people that just always stood highly in my regard as a musician, and I wanted to bring that onto this album just to acknowledge what he means to me in my development. Talking to you, I think, is an opportunity to kind of go both ways on the question of whether it's an intimate relationship or just a friendship, because really, whatever degree of friendship or relationship one has with another person, I think that the more honest that communication is, leads to whether or not the relationship is being built on solid ground. And when somebody's not listening, the skills of listening, obviously, is kind of one of those other things I've learned having two daughters, is that listening is a huge skill that if you haven't developed it, it'll show pretty quickly in having deep conversations. So the deep conversations, I think, are what lead to the good relationship, or at least one where both individuals are clearly aware of what they're talking about and what they're concerned about. And really, that's kind of it. So talking to you is, I just want to make sure that you're listening, and I'll try and listen to you. That's kind of that simple dialogue message. For Our Daughters is a lullaby, and that was definitely written with the back in my mind, the days when my two lovely kids were little and real sort of tied with their family strings to dad and mom, and that connection is really up to the years, before they become teenagers. They're just in your life and you're in theirs, and it's really good without any outside interference usually, and that's where the initial bond is. And there were many times when, of course, you stay up with a kid to put them to sleep, or when they're sick or they just can't sleep or whatever, restlessness. And I think the seeds of that song basically were created with those memories, and how touching those memories were at that time. And I didn't really want to use a lyrical device to convey that. I wanted to try and keep it, again, the importance of the acoustic guitar as being the front instrument. This is another song where that is exactly it, and the guitar play is the lullaby, and nothing I don't feel like that there's a need for me to add to it lyrically. And so it was kind of interesting to make that decision and put that on the album. A Matter of Time is one of those pieces of let's call it a poem that wants to address that if you're paying attention to your life and giving people time, giving situations time, the proper amount of time and stuff, then maybe these questions don't come up. But when you catch yourself, when you realize that you have come up short a little bit on your own effort, or on your own input, on your own contribution that you make to your own life by just staying observant and staying aware and sort of on and responsive, and of course that gets back to being the listening quality, and A Matter of Time, you can go on, and the tough part about time, I think, is when you realize that even though you've known something that maybe isn't helpful, that you'll still continue that behavior as a habit without realizing that it's a waste of time. And so I was trying to touch on how sometimes we can waste time just by not acting in our own best interests. So that's kind of what it is in a way also, is a song about acting in your best interests, staying sharp, staying responsive, keeping your friends in the loop, and keeping your relationships informed, and all that stuff that nowadays you do to make yourself feel like you're a worthy member of society. If we look at our life as an opportunity, then maybe that helps with appreciation. If we take it for granted, as the saying goes, then time seems to slip away and we can lose it. Unforgettable one is that those individuals that you met that maybe you lost track of, and they come to mind every once in a while. They're not necessarily a romantic relationship, although they certainly could be. But sometimes they're just people that were there for a while, and you realize they're not, and you look back fondly on those individuals and whatever event that happened that has created that spontaneous sort of smile or laughter, or even tears. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a happy opportunity. It could have been a sadder one too. I chose I Saw the Light by Todd Rundgren to put on the album so that, again, I'm paying homage to a guy who I think is a tremendous talent and person, very gifted, and had a highly melodic lyrical sense of music and how to put it together. And it was always very fascinating to me to listen to his radio tunes. And I Saw the Light was, it seemingly, just by its title alone, it seems to give the positive outlook, the positive response. again, and that's probably what is a thread between all the songs on the album, is I'm trying to, I guess, convey that it's all about moving forward and living. We all have a life sentence. We can live it the way we choose to live it, and most of that is how we live it in our head. And I Saw the Light is about a guy who's struggling with a romantic interest, and how they sort of come together, and he basically ends up playing his case to say, okay, I made mistakes, but I saw the light now, and I get it, and you're the one for me. And that's a happy way, I think a productive way to look at. It reveals a bit of a self-examination, and maybe people haven't read that into that song, but I guess I've done it enough times where I have thought about it and see it as one of those things of being honest. And I Saw the Light implies sort of a directness, an honesty that I'd like to say I achieve in my music. Yeah, I do like to play those little word games once in a while, and Two Sisters is directed to them, and it's, when you have kids, you're there from the get-go. You're there from day one, even before, but you're there through their whole lives and watching every inch of it. So when my first daughter was born, it was a certain light bulb went off that I had a daughter. But I think when the second daughter was born, 5 years later, it was underlining that in a way that it gave me sort of an opportunity to test my skills. Did I learn enough with the first daughter to apply to the second daughter? And I think she did benefit. I think everybody benefited from that one. But yeah, so the song was meant to be to them as well as about them. And I kind of needed to make a title that they knew was for them. No mystery about it. Yeah, no Fairytale. I needed to have a way to sort of finalize the statement that I felt this album makes. It needed to say, you can try everything you want. You can try, as long as you're, have agreement with anybody else around that's cool. That you can try anything you want that you can think of. But not everything is a good idea. And sometimes these things lead to destructive ends. And a lot of times the things that you have your eyes set on are goals that require a lot of effort to accomplish. To have a good life is work. And so the reality of that is it's no fairy tale. You can't just have a good life, and you can't just expect everybody around you to have a good life if you don't put a little bit of effort into that for yourself and for the people that are closest to you, your family or whatever.
So Bruce, one last thing. In summation, now we're done talking about the album. Tell us a little bit about your hopes for this album, and where do you plan to go from here with your music?
Right to the top, Johnny, to the very top, tippy top. This album leads to the next album.
Let's go.
When the cards are dealt, you play your hand. Whatever you felt made you take a stand. Sometimes life is cruel to those